Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Well, hello everybody, it's Pastured Pig Podcast time again. Excited to be back. Day late and a dollar short seems to be the theme that I'm going through here this month. But excited to have this podcast episode ready to go out. So, as always, I want to thank everyone that listens to the podcast, the feedback we've been having, the guests that have been on the show. It's really been a real treat. I've met a lot of interesting people. And it's actually, caused me to have interactions with them even more, face-to-face interactions. So it's really neat. It's like building a network of friends through this technology. Really exciting. Well, obviously, this couldn't happen if it wasn't for the support of our patrons on Patreon. We thank you all so much. Our givers at the $5 level that help us keep the lights on and help us keep this running, all the way up to our boar sponsors that really help underscore what we're doing here. And I want to give a shout out to those, John and Mark and Tina and Chuck and Fritz and Noah and Rob and Matt D and Tango Papa. Thank you all so much for supporting at that maximum level there. It means a lot to me. Well, updates on the farm. Well, I am excited to say we finally have pigs back on the farm here at Red Tool House. It's been several months without any little flat-nosed creatures running around. So excited to have those back. So what we did, we acquired some pigs from Revercombe Farm in Virginia. That's Mindy Lipinski. We've had her on the podcast before. I mentioned this already. But Mindy had reserved for me 6 Berkshire Blue Butt Cross that were farrowed late winter. So I think it was actually a litter of 8. So she allowed me to just take out 6. 6 was all I needed right now. And so we drove over, my father and I drove over there. What's it been now? I'm trying to do the math in my head. It's been a week. It's been about 10 days now. So it's been 10 days. We drove over to Virginia, Shenandoah Valley, and loaded these pigs, but obviously took a tour of the farm as well. And we featured all of that on a video on our Red Tool House channel on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, you can see our transport, bringing them home, getting them here in training pen. But also we did a tour of Mindy's farm. She let us go around with the camera. She told us some of the details of her setup. Really neat setup. I'm definitely jealous of all that rolling flat that you see in the Shenandoah Valley. It's, goodness, there's a reason why my ancestors settled there in the late 1600s. It's a shame we had to move out. But excited to have them as I'm recording right now. Let me look here. So my office window, I can look down on the training paddock. I'm using my pig hut, my overglorified doghouse. It's that big plastic pig hut that I've had on the channel before. And I'm looking, and I can look right in the door, and they're all just laying there chilling out. We had a pretty heavy rain last night, so they don't appear to be in any hurry to get up. The feeder's full, the water is full, and I put a lot of wood chips and straw down in the training paddock because it's just a 16 by 32 area right now. So they'll, of course, tear that up in no time. So we've got a deep layer of mulch right now in there. And that, of course, is helping mitigate mud and potential pig smell. So excited to do that, to have them here. We'll be releasing them into our northern pasture, which I haven't had any pigs on in almost 2 years now. So there's an area there that's slightly overgrown. A lot of it's wood, so it's not too bad a shape as far as overgrowth goes. But they'll be able to get in there and cut some of that down and have a good time. So we're looking forward to that. Well, the sponsor for this week's podcast, really no specific sponsor. We're just going to continue rolling on and just shouting out our store at Red Tool House. We've actually had a large number of comfrey sales come through this spring as people see the benefit of that plant. Doesn't necessarily pertain directly to pastured pigs, although there is a method to my madness with some of that. That's why I keep growing more and more of it. But so we've had an increase in comfrey sales, and then of course we have our pig apparel. We've got our pig snout hat that we've rolled out, so it's available for purchase there if you want to check that out. The links will be down in the show notes. Okay, so our guest today is a guest we've had on the podcast before, but it's all the way back to December of 2019 is episode 28 is when we had Jim Chelbowski, or as he goes by, Dr. Smokehouse. And I love that. So Jim's a great guy to talk to. When we talked to him in 2019, he was in Pennsylvania. He since then moved up in the world, and by up, I mean he's moved north. So he's in Maine now. So he has sounds like a beautiful farm up in Maine where he raises a small herd of pigs to process on farm for himself, and then his true love of all of this is the charcuterie side. So Jim has spent time traveling the world, learning how different cultures cure and use pork, and he's learned from those skills. He's bringing them back, and he applies them to his efforts there on the farm, and he's really turned that farm he's building that farm into a destination educational location. So a place where people come take some classes. There's things he's building with his barn and with his processing facility, all of that just really, really make it a neat place to check out. Hopefully one of these days I get back up into New England, I'll definitely be able to stop by and visit him. He's given me an invite there, and love to do that. Love to see his setup. Sounds pretty cool. Well, without any further ado, let's get into that discussion and let Jim tell a story.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Troy. Today, we are doing a revisit. We are meeting with Jim Chelbowski, or better known as Dr. Smokehouse. Welcome, Jim.
Hello, Troy.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And for those of you that have been listening since day one, you may recognize Jim or recognize that moniker. He was on episode 28, which, believe it or not, was in December of 2019. So a little over 5 years ago, if I'm doing my high school math right. Yeah, a little over 5 years ago, we had Jim on there. So, Jim, where were you 5 years ago? And explain to us where you are now.
5 years ago, I was living in central Pennsylvania and had a small farm at about 7 acres, raised some pigs. My focus then was slaughtering my own animals and doing various forms of charcuterie, as well as teaching some classes. My wife and I purchased a property in 2022 in the state of Maine. My wife is originally from Maine. So we had always talked about moving back. We found a great property with 90 acres in mid-coast Maine. For listeners, it's near Camden and Damariscotta. And so we fully moved here in 2023. I had no pigs on the ground and no real infrastructure. At when we got here, we had there was an old house built in 1850. There was a small, I'll call it a barn garage. It was, but there wasn't anything for animals. So had to build some paddocks out, and then had my first pigs on the ground this spring.
Awesome. So were those feeder piglets that you got as piglets or mature?
They were feeders, and I the first two were imported from Pennsylvania. So there was a woman that I used to get pigs from in central Pennsylvania, Tamworth Pigs, and so she had a litter, and I asked one of my friends, Brian, if he would be so kind to bring pigs up for me, and he agreed. And so he actually transported 2 piglets up to me.
Oh wow, nice! That's a good friend.
He's a very good friend. He's actually helped me build paddocks. Prior to I had basically open farmland, so I just used a system of I had a peripheral hard fence, but I also had I used like the hog netting, and I would rotate the pigs, every week or 2 weeks, or depending on how big they were and how much they were rooting. So fast forward here, really 95% of our property is wooded. And so we had to create some paddocks in the woods. So my friend Brian he's a retired dairy farmer. So he convinced me that we need to put high tensile fence in, which we did, which was a challenge through the woods, but it actually has worked out very well. So we created 2 paddocks. One's probably half an acre. The second one's about 1.5 acres or so. But it's been great. The trees up here, it's a mixed, we have a mixed forest. I actually have some really nice mature oaks, a lot of different pine. So we're in the process also of thinning. I mean, you had a program on silvopasture a while back, which I really enjoyed listening to that but I'm reverse silvopasturing because I have to remove trees to create to enhance those oaks particularly.
Yep. That's the way we are here too. Yes, for sure.
Yep. Similar to probably what you are.
Yeah. So did you mention it, Jim? And maybe I missed it. Did you? You said 90% of the property was forested, but did you say the number of acres for the whole tract?
96 acres.
Okay, so we're dealing with a lot of land then. That's
and we're also at the same time we're actually building kind of I'll call it an event barn. We're building a 36 by 48 structure that actually the majority of the lumber is harvested here. So there's a old circular sawmill up the road, and we have some great timber framers that are working on it. So it's a timber frame construction. Nice. So that area had to be completely cleared. So there's been a lot of chainsaw use here. My son Peter, who lives here, he's been helping a lot, working hard, as well as anybody else I can drag into the fray. They come visit. I'm like, well, you're going to help me work a little bit if you're visiting.
Right. Oh man, I love that. I love the timber. I mean, you're right up there near the Shelter Institute. You've got all kinds of timber framers around.
Yeah. There. In fact, that my friend, one of the workers actually went to Shelter, the main timber framer, and actually my son Peter went to Shelter as well for their course. And in fact, Peter's going to build, once we get our project done, he's going to build his house here on the property as well. So
cool.
It's so lots going on, but had some time to actually was hoping to have this whole barn done, and so I could process pigs, but that wasn't the case for various reasons, delay in construction. So it still has no roof on it, but I do have a walk-in cooler in, and we were able to process the 2 of the pigs so far.
Nice. Well, that's exciting. I'll ask you one more timber frame question, then we'll get on with the pigs.
Yeah, sure.
So, you said you're harvesting the timber off the property? Are you doing pine? Do you have a lot of white pine?
It's majority white pine.
Nice.
So the majority of the stuff is white pine. The wind braces are oak, and then we cut a big oak. We're gonna put in some oak flooring.
Excellent.
And then there's part of the walls on the upstairs. There was a large poplar that came down in a windstorm that was probably about maybe 24 inches in diameter. So that's going to go to some of the interior wall boards as well. So it's going to be kind of cool.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'd love to see that come together.
Yeah, if you're ever up this way, you have to pay a visit, because it's really, I mean, it's taken a while. That also started in 23. So there've been a lot of delays for various and sundry reasons, but we're hoping to wrap it up here in the next I don't want to even guess 3 months or so. Hopefully we'll have a fully functioning building.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's do a quick backstory, because there's a chance some people haven't listened to the episode 5 years ago. And you don't necessarily have to go back and talk about Pennsylvania and all those type of things, but kind of the gig. So you've mentioned an activities barn. You've talked about got your cooler in. You're going to be able to butcher and then the real key to your moniker, of course, is Dr. Smokehouse. There's all kinds of explanation there. So if you wouldn't mind, kind of give the 40,000 foot elevation view of what you're doing on your property and the experiences you have with pigs and how that's affecting what all you're doing right now.
Sure. I got into pigs via charcuterie. So I was doing, buying meat and doing a little bit of simple sausages and stuff. And then there was a farm in New Jersey called Most Fund, and they had imported Mangalitsa pigs, and they had a Hungarian butcher that came and was teaching a course. My wife saw that and thought I would like it. So I went to that course, and that sort of changed me. And I bought a pig. I came back, wanted to make all this stuff. I bought a pig. Not only it was the classic, commodity pig, and it was also skinned. A lot of the local processors skinned them. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know really what to do. So the next year I went to the local auction barn and got some pigs, and then I off to the races. So over the years, I've raised multiple different breeds, probably a dozen different breeds. I really traveled all over doing charcuterie, and it became my passion. So, charcuterie is just the old way of preserving, whether you're going to salt, whether it's, down where you are, maybe the country hams versus the prosciutto that people know, versus there's so many different variations. And so then along the way, I befriended a gentleman by the name of Francois Vecchio. He came to my place, and we did 2 full-blown classes there. I also had befriended guys that you've had on the podcast before, Doug Wharton and Andrew Lane of Hanyun Farm.
Yeah.
And so they came to my place and did a class in, I believe that was 2022. In the fall of 2022, I think they did that. I think. It's 21 or 22. Anyway, they're actually going to come here to Maine. I tentatively got them scheduled for this September.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's exciting. So they're going to come up here and do a class here. That'll be the first class that I'll host here.
Nice.
So that's really my focus and my passion is doing that, teaching people those simple things, whether it's I've done like one simple sausage class here. I have I'm gonna tentatively do a bacon making class at I don't know if your listeners or you have heard of MOFGA, which is the Maine Organic Farmers and Growers Association.
No.
And they have a wonderful fall event called the Common Ground Fair. And Common Ground is every year in late September. Anyway, they do a Homestead Day in the summer in June, where it's a free event, basically all kind of different, from fermenting to apple ladder building to whatever. And so I'm going to do a bacon class there.
Oh, wow.
So that's been my focus is raising pigs, actually for my family to eat and do, but also I like that aspect of teaching and sharing that knowledge with people, keeping that old world knowledge alive.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously the pigs out on your pasture or in your woodlot, you're really just raising the material for where you really like to be. That's your wheelhouse is in the charcuterie side. All that post-production is kind of where you want to hang out, and the pigs are you're just going further upstream, providing your own materials.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that it really, you can't do it without really good pigs. And what we've also learned is older pigs, bigger pigs. So, people's, the commodity pigs, are already in 6 months, and even people that do heritage pigs, they may take a little longer, but you're probably not doing a 400-pound pig. But those actually make wonderful charcuterie.
Yeah.
So that's also why to take a pig that's a little bit bigger. Like, it's funny, we didn't start out that way, but to us, a small pig is 250.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's funny you say that. We just got our 3 breed stock pigs back from the processor. We had retired those and actually got out some bacon yesterday to prepare it, and the bacon was about 3 inches wide and about 18 inches long, and it's not the typical bacon you would see.
Yeah, for sure, right? Yeah.
It was a fantastic process, and then, my goodness, the amount of back fat and leaf lard we got. I'll be
you'll be set for quite a while. You better get into the soap business.
Yeah, exactly. So let's unpack that a little bit, because I think that's so key, Jim, and obviously with your experience in all the charcuterie and the finishing, to really appreciate this. Over the time that you've been doing this, how much have you noticed that you go from a typical commodity pig, like you said, like you started out with? How much does breed and diet and environment, all of that fitting into what you're seeing when you get a great finished product?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And the epitome of that is the Spanish Iberico de Belota. So anybody, if everybody wants to make a wonderful, wonderful trip, go to the region in Spain where they raise the pigs in what they call the dehesas. So there are these oak forests, and to be an Iberico de Belota, the pig has to finish its last 4 months of its life in this acorn forest. And the oak trees there are they're very prolific. There's a cork oak and a home oak, and like I said, it truly produces the most fantastic ham I've ever had in my life. Now, we can't do that here. I mean, I give my pigs acorns. I've done different things with feed. When I was in Pennsylvania, my feed mill was able to give me a feed that was 100% barley, which made for really nice back fat for salami making. So that makes a difference. I think the breed thing does matter a little bit. For example, Mangalitsa fat is way too soft for salami. It's just a softer fat. Even eating the same stuff, it's a soft fat. And so that one, the Maishon is similar. The fat is too soft for salami. Now, I will say a Mangalitsa Copa, which is a neck cut, dry cured, it is fantastic. It is creamy and delicious. Their jowl bacon is wonderful. So I'm not dissing those. It's just what you like. I really, really, really favor these Tamworths because even when they get big, the meat to fat ratio is really nice. And so I everybody has their little preferences. There are some pigs that I've raised and will never raise again. I've raised Coonies. I've raised American Guinea Hog. Both of those are popular with homesteaders, but you got to like fat or you got to harvest them early, so it depends on what you like and what you want.
Yeah. Sounds like there's obviously pros and cons to the different breeds based upon the finishing process, and that kind of explains why you've experimented with all the different breeds, so you can hone your craft more and really be able to isolate the things you like.
Yeah, and here it's just an interesting. I don't know if anybody's talked about this, and this was a unique thing. So here I get a feed called WOB. It's wheat, oats, barley, and molasses.
Interesting.
And it actually comes out the woman. There's a farmer here. I was asking around at the local farmers market before I had pigs, like, where do you get your pig feed? And one of the farmers there said, well, give this woman a call they raise primarily cattle, but she gets all kind of feed out of somewhere in Canada because we're not that far, and so she, they have like a standard hog grower pellet, but then they have this wob, and so I've actually finished the hogs on it. They seem to grow out pretty nice. I mean, I've been pretty happy with it. It's been interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting combination. So you said wheat, oats, barley,
oats,
and molasses.
Barley and molasses.
Yeah, that molasses. I mean, so are you have you processed any of those pigs yet? Are you seeing anything? Is there a smoke?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. You don't really necessarily taste it, but the pigs do smell a little bit molasses. I think it's just because they get it on them.
Right.
But I mean, so far, the things that we've eaten, it's been nice. I mean, it hasn't blown me away one way or the other. I haven't made any salami, although the fat did seem a little bit softer. I mean, to me, than what I'm used to, but I'm not, having not made some salami, I'm not really sure. But it's been fine. Yeah, that's been another interesting kind of thing. So I'm going to stick with that for now. I think we'll see.
Yeah. Because I'm trying to think of the protein. So you don't have soy in there. Is the
well, the barley has some pretty good bit of protein.
Yeah, I'll say that would be the.
Okay. Yeah, that's the main.
I was trying to think of the percentages that would have to be, but
I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know if I've studied the label of that enough to see what I don't know if it has the percentages on there. Just it might have the raw, basically because it's all the, if you will, raw ingredients.
Yeah, that's interesting though. I mean, there's a lot of people that like to get away from soy just simply because of soy. It is what it is, and of course, what they do to process soy and to protect soy with the sprays and all those type of things. So there's a lot of people that want to get away from that. So that's yet another value add for a finished product. There is more natural feed finish with less introduction to pesticides through the process. Interesting. All right. So so moving to Maine, obviously moving to Maine was interdependent of what you're doing with the pigs. It wasn't like, hey, I got to move to Maine and we're going to be doing because we could do something great. But with the barn that you're building, with the property now that you have all this access to, and just kind of where you are in a stage of life, are you seeing this to be something you transition to, where this is a total experience to come, not only have the classes, but be able to maybe even do some agritourism elements there? What do you guys?
Yeah, I think so. We're kind of going to figure that out, but we've talked about that. We also have a good friend that's a chef that might do some pop-up dinners. So we're actually going to build it. Actually, he's going to have a full commercial kitchen in this facility, which will also be nice for hosting classes. My wife is a specialist in getting children outdoors. She is one of probably the few people in the U.S. that is a forest school certified teacher.
Oh, wow.
So in the UK, a forest school is basically taking kids outside and teaching them all of their stuff outside. So in the UK and in different parts of Europe, that's pretty common, especially like different, like some of the Scandinavian countries as well. It's really big. So she is actually bringing somebody, the person that taught her. So she went to a course in New York State a number of years ago and then really got into this. So she's actually hosting a forest school class on our property this summer. So she's going to have the first event here.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm going to have this after. And then we might do, we have another friend that's a musician. So we might do some pop-up music events. And then we might just do like open mic, kind of come and make it a community thing. That's the other thing for us. I know we'd like this thing to pay for itself, at least. But we don't we're not, we don't want to do a wedding venue, like we're not going to go that route. We would rather do it in education, food education, and, animal husbandry education. All of that sort of thing is kind of where our focus is.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. I mean, and you're still managing an all farm career, correct?
Yeah. Although I'm actually a family physician by day.
Mm-hmm.
But in the transition of life, I decided that I was going to just work 2 days a week.
Nice. Yeah.
So that will prolong my career. I mean, when I was working full time, it was a bit much, although the pigs and all this other stuff was my release. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
I don't golf. That's my thing. My thing became, especially on the days when, I'm getting up and it's, pitch dark out, going out to feed the pigs. I never really minded it. I just, is what I like to do. And so, I must say it's nicer on, like, I worked this week, Monday and Tuesday, what didn't work today. So it's nicer that I don't have to go out in the dark and feed the pigs.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
come home in the dark. And, it's interesting here. The days are now longer, but the days are a little shorter up here in North,
Right.
especially in November, December, man. There's not much daylight.
Yeah. And then that's the thing always impressed me about Maine was that, but then also the time of day, because you're further east than what I'm used to in West Virginia. So even being still in the Eastern time zone, it gets dark up there in the middle of winter, like at 3:30 or 4 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like, wait, it's way too early to be this dark.
100%. I mean, that's probably the hard time. And I just heard this saying today. This is this end of March is called the March Wall or the March Hill, is like getting up over that, because it's a rough month, because you're like, okay, winter's great, but we've had enough of it. I mean, it snowed here. Literally, we had a nice day. And then we had 5 inches of snow earlier this week.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, that's been a little bit of a challenge. I mean, I was used to snow in Pennsylvania, but not this much for this long.
Mm-hmm.
We had pretty cold temps, and we had snow on the ground for really all of January, all of February into March, and just kept on piling up and piling up. I mean, so much so that I'm like, okay, I thought I put this fence a little higher than this, because the pigs are like right there. I had to scrape like underneath it just to make sure that they're not going to walk over it.
Right. Yeah. That's what's crazy. Well, we had a snowpack for the entire month of January, which is so abnormal for us. We usually it sticks around for a couple of days and melts off. But yeah, it seems like everybody on the East Coast got a much harsher winter. And I was doing an interview with a fella in Ontario, and just here recently, and he was talking about the same thing, that going out and realizing he was running out of fence post height to keep moving his electric line up, because he's like, the snow just won't stop piling up. So it made it a little bit of a challenge. So let me ask you this. So obviously transitioning to the new property, kind of not starting from scratch, but you really have a blank canvas there when it comes to your setup. So explain, if you would, to our audience, what does the Dr. Smokehouse processing facility look like in your mind that you're in the process of putting together? So you said already a cooler, but what are some of the key pieces of equipment you have, and just some of the neat things that you've learned over the years to add to this new build out?
Well, a couple things. One, I couldn't move my smokehouse because it was a little too heavy. So we actually we're building, well, it's still under construction. So although the smokehouse is technically functional, so we built, we have the cinder blocks up, we have the firebox, we did all of that to prep the smokehouse. And if anybody ever wants to read a really good book, there's a gentleman by the name of Marianski. He's written a bunch of books on home sausage and all this kind of stuff, but he has a book on Meat Smoking and Smokehouse Design. It's a small paperback. It's very inexpensive. It is I think that one of the definitive books on smokehouses. And I used a lot of that, plus some of my own knowledge. I made my smokehouse a little bit different. I won't go into all the technical things with that, but the smokehouse, like I said, I have the basic structure there. We just need a door and we need a roof and we need to finish it. But that's one thing. I also am building out what we call a curing room. So that's going to be an insulated room with some vents. I'm going to have an air conditioner unit in there because for most meat curing, you want your temp to be around 55, and then you have to keep the humidity 75 to 85%. In my old place, I just walled off part of a basement. I had an air intake, and I did most of the stuff in the winter, so it really wasn't a problem. I wanted to put something underground here. It's the water table wouldn't allow it. And so where I was building, especially, it would have just filled with water. And we talked about it, and I'm like, okay, I'll just build this above ground. And so that's a work in progress. It's not done yet, so we'll see what happens. And then like I said, I investigated. I was debating whether I was going to build in Pennsylvania. We walled off some stuff. A friend and I basically built a walk-in cooler. And if anybody's familiar, some of your listeners might be the CoolBot, which is a way to use an air conditioner to become a cooler.
Yeah.
So CoolBot actually now makes a walk-in cooler. So after a lot of deliberation and looking at costs, those things have come way down. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go with the CoolBot, and I'm happy I did. It has actually a rail system that I bought with it, and really, so far, that's functional. So far, I've been happy with that product.
Nice. Well, that rail system.
So, and then we're going to have a kitchen and do other kind of stuff, and the footprint of the building is fairly open, which is cool. So it's a nice open space. It allows us to do a lot of different things.
Yeah, that rail system will be nice. That'll extend the amount of years you can do that, and of course save your back in the process.
100% already. It's been nice. Just not have you have a place to hang stuff, and that's really, really nice.
Yeah, I'll never forget when we processed one of our boars. He was a year and a half old, and we halved him and had him hanging on the tractor bucket, and then moved him to the barn in the crossmember with the coat hanger deal there. And so I was having my son's like, okay, when it was time to take him down after he hung for a couple of days, like, okay, let's just cut the tendon there, and I'll be able to just toss that over my shoulder. So you get up there on that and you cut that tendon, and I'll catch it and sling it over my shoulder and take it over the table. It looked like a Three Stooges episode.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm thinking,
with big pigs.
Yeah, it was a little bit really larger than I anticipated.
Yeah, so it's interesting. One thing we did do differently, because I'm also, which is going to be really cool once it's done. So out the front, so you're probably familiar with like the old hay pulley systems.
Yeah.
So hoist the hay bale up.
Yep.
So we're putting it's going to be really, really cool. There's a piece that's going to go out. It's it's bigger than that. It's a pine beam that's probably like 6 feet long. It's going to be supported by a wind brace that's going to come out the front, so we can hoist the pig out the front. And then it's really cool. Again, woodworking, but you may have heard of shashugabon, which is burning wood.
Burning the wood. Mm-hmm.
So we actually burnt that beam before. That was the timber framer's idea, and so it's going to look really cool. Plus, it's going to be functional because we're going to hoist pigs there.
Yeah.
So that's another cool little, just a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
So really look forward once this thing is all finished. That part is not. It's laying there. It's not. I mean, the whole frame isn't assembled. They're getting closer, but it's going to be nice once it's all done.
Yeah, it sounds great. That sounds great. And I want to back up a little bit just to hit some of the things you talked about. So the smokehouse, of course, when you're talking smokehouse, we're talking cold smoke, right? We're talking remote
cold
fire.
Smoke,
yeah.
Yeah, I can technically hot smoke with this if I leave all the vents open. I made I made the family kielbasa, that was my grandfather's recipe. And so there's a way of doing it by just increasing the airflow and really building a brisk fire. But it's primarily cold smoke.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
The firebox is about 8 feet from the smokehouse, so that allows it to cool down. And if you're just building a reasonable slow fire, yeah, it's going to get nice cold smoke. And really, I've been very happy with that. There's abundance of apple here. In fact, the neighbor had a part of an apple tree go down, and I do have some wild cherry on the property. Those are my favorite smoking woods are a mix of wild cherry and apple.
Nice.
I love that. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. We have an abundance of wild cherry. Apple, not as much, but I've got more wild cherry and I know what to do with right now because there's a lot of it on the
wild
ground.
Cherry makes nice, it colors the meat very nicely.
Yeah.
It gives them that nice, more reddish color. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So now is your curing room, that's kind of the tail end, pardon that, but is that prior to smoke or after smoke?
So, well, it would be, so some things are not smoked at all. So
Right.
like a prosciutto, and I have a leg hanging now just in the walk-in now, because it and you can do it in a walk-in. It you can actually cure bigger pieces in a walk-in. But like for salamis and stuff, you want it in that really controlled humidity temperature environment. But yeah, that curing room is really for all that. Now there is a ham that we love to make called a speck. So speck is cured first, so it's put on salt, right? Salt and then some spices. It's that way. Then it is smoked at least a total of 60 hours over. Basically you give it sequential smokes, and then you hang it to dry. So it takes that ham, it's not different than the hams that we would cook, but that ham takes, like 8 or 9, 10 months, even a year before it's ready, depending on how big it is. But so that's one of the combinations. So yeah, there's all these different permutations. And I would tell anybody that if they really want to get into that, go to a class, somewhere like that we host, or my buds at Anyun Farm host, or there's a couple other people that do, but I think theirs is the best. Like I said, we're going to be having this class here in September, and it's really meant for everybody from a novice, because we really take it all different ways. We take it from, okay, you want to slaughter your pig. Do you just want pork chops and sausage? Okay, that's fine. And that's nothing wrong with that. Do you want to make a prosciutto? Okay, we can take it we'll take it that way. Do you want to do all this other kind of niche stuff, if you will? And so even the processing, so it's really, really interesting. So I had these pigs. We have a tractor. We have a tractor here that we could hoist, and we did do some of the processing. But I had a nice system. We had a nice, my buddy built a nice tripod where it's just a nice way to cut the pig in half and do all that. So we didn't have that at first. Plus we were working in a different element. So we butchered this pig in, as I call it, the Spanish style. So it's really interesting. You essentially, after you, we did two things. One, to scald and scrape the pig. So people are probably familiar with like scalding troughs and dipping them or burning them. Well, I learned from old Italian gentlemen what we call the pour over. So if you just pour boiling water in a small section and you work section to section, you can scrape them off. So it works really quite well. And so we scalded it that way, but to butcher it, we basically laid the pig after we eviscerated it, laid the pig on its back, and you essentially spatchcock it.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
So you basically remove the whole spine, right? You actually what you do first is you cut the rib cage, you where the ribs meet the spine, you actually take, in our case, I also collect cleavers. So I had this bone cleaver that you basically have someone hold it there. You pound that, break through that ribs right where the rib meets the vertebrae, right?
Okay.
So then basically then you can pry that open, right? You cut off the ribs, then you basically dissect the spine out.
Wow.
So
okay.
the whole spine comes out intact.
So you're doing that on both sides. You're separating the ribs from
Yep.
the vertebrae
Ribs
on both
on
sides.
Yep. And then once the spine comes out, you basically are left with the boneless belly, right?
Yeah.
Your loins, and then your four legs. So you can just, the way you do it, you separate those legs out, right? The legs still have the bones in them.
Yeah.
And then you can process your legs later or make whatever you wanted to do. But it worked really well in our space here because we like I said, we hung it from the tractor, but it wasn't going to work too well to cut it in half. And it was like, and what's nice about that is a lot of the work is already done. I had people here for a day work, and I'm like, so but at the end of the day, we had the bacons already separated. We got those on salt. We had the loins separated, and you wouldn't get, the only thing you don't get with that, you don't get pork chops. Yeah. You get ribs, but no pork chops, but you get boneless pork loin, schnitzel, or just boneless chops. I mean, it's, delicious.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's interesting. And so even going back to your pour over scald, that makes handling a lot easier. Like I said, if you don't have big equipment or you're dealing with a much larger hog that you don't have a dunk tank big enough or a tractor.
100%. And that's why, it's a really interesting method. In fact, I think what we're going to try to do at the class is maybe we might do one pig. We're going to do butcher one pig, at the class. And what we've learned from the classes too, when I first started the classes, I had been butchering pigs for a while. And I thought, we're going to have 10 students and we need a demo. We can go ahead and butcher 6 pigs in a day with students. Slaughter and then go from there. Right?
Yeah.
That was crazy. Luckily I had a lot of good help, especially for people who've never done it before.
Yeah.
Right. But I had a lot of good expert folks and it got done. But normally, like when we do classes now, we like to do maybe 1, maybe 2 hogs, just because, that way you can slow down and take your time and people can ask questions. You don't have to worry about got to get this done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's,
but we also love to do, I don't know if we talked about this the last time. I typically make a blood sausage with every hog.
mm-hmm.
So it's like one of the things that I do to honor the hogs. And so this one, the first hog, we made a Spanish morcilla, which is basically rice and onion, and blood, rice, onion, and blood, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the second one, I did a British style black pudding, and that has like oats and barley, which is just, there's always some filler in blood sausage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's the other thing that we like to do, and just to do that, usually do something with like the kidneys and the liver and all of that kind of stuff too. We like to honor the pig, all the offcuts. So I tell people, hey, if you want to learn how to do all that stuff, look at the Europeans, because they do a far better job than we do here.
Exactly. Minimal waste, if any.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that to me is the beauty of that. And that's what you had to do, whether you're living, back in the day, right? Back, whether you're in Appalachia or you're in Andalusia, Spain, you probably butchered 1 or 2 hogs, and that was it.
Exactly.
That was it for the year.
Yeah.
So you enjoyed the perishable stuff first.
Mm-hmm.
And, you preserved and did whatever you could later.
Yeah. Oh, my wife and I were just talking about that yesterday, about seasonal eating and just how far removed we are in our culture today from seasonal eating. And this time of year, our great grandparents, our grandparents would be running out of what's in the cellar. They're done with some of the cold weather vegetables, the things that's been stored, and they're really anxious for that first fresh vegetable from the garden. And we take that for granted so much because we can go to the grocery store and get a fake tomato and think, oh, this is just like fresh. So,
For sure. Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. So I mean, just in the little bit you've said, Jim, and then talking to you before, and of course talking with Andy and Doug, and there's so much that we don't know when it comes to all the incredible value add, the post-production that you can do with a hog. So when you're
100%.
So when you're doing these classes, I mean, how do you tell people what they don't know? I mean, if they're saying, hey, we're coming for a class for this, but it's like, hey, there's 16 other things I want to introduce you to, but we just don't have the time or the bandwidth.
Yeah. Well, we do. And so that's part of what I would love to do here. So, like we learned, so I'll give you a good example. So we, I guess it was in 23. Yeah. In the fall of 23, a young German butcher that I met at another class somewhere. We invited him to come to the US. And so it really fascinating. So his family has a butcher shop restaurant. And if you can believe this, they receive the pigs 20 minutes after slaughter at his restaurant butcher shop.
Oh, wow.
And so
still warm.
They actually, literally 20 to 30 minutes. Like they're still warm, and so they do this. So he took us through like the traditional, like in his region, what they do. And there's actually something called a slaughter plate, which is, it's an interesting way that they cut out part of the back fat and cook that with some of the meat there and the liver and the blood. Yeah, it's really interesting. But then went into this whole thing about all of the like bratwurst and all. It was phenomenal. So like we had all been doing this a long time. It blew us away, all the things that he made. And so, what I would love to do here is to do some like the quote unquote, the basic class slaughter, and then, basic charcuterie, and that's what Andy and Doug try to do in their classes, that basic. But I would love to do a very special, like, AKA the French pig, the Spanish pig, the whatever pig, and take it a different way.
Well, yeah.
And so that's what I envision doing, like all kind of different things here.
Yeah. And that's what fascinates me between, national influence, ethnic influence, even demographic. There's social economic influence that comes into this when we go back years, centuries to see how people process their animals. It's just mind-numbing to think how many different ways there are to utilize the pig. Is there any type of comprehensive resource that you're aware of, Jim? Is there like the encyclopedia, the World Book of Knowledge when it comes to a collection of all of this different?
No, there's not. I mean, it's interesting because when I was in Spain, because one of my kids went to school there, and I was doing mostly Italian stuff, and my eyes got opened, and I was looking for like a book on Spanish charcuterie. Well, there is now. There's a chef by the name of Jeff Weiss who wrote a book called Charcuteria. So what happens in our mentor Francois wrote a small book, but even he doesn't cover everything. I mean, he knows it all. Like there isn't. I mean, maybe that's what I should do is write the definitive, all-encompassing guide to this, because that's what I find fascinating. I also find fascinating, really, one interesting story, the crossover. So I talked about how the Spanish do a pig. So really fascinating. So along the way, I think since I last talked to you, so this is a really interesting story. I was at Andy and Doug's at a class, and I was helping them out, and we were having a bourbon after class or something, and Doug Wharton says to me, "Hey, you're good at connecting people. I have an idea. I want you to write Wendell Berry a letter." And supposedly, if you write Wendell Berry a letter, he'll respond.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So I wrote Wendell Berry a letter, got a letter back. So I said, oh, okay. It was really nice. Because we read his, I don't know if you've heard his poem For the Hog Killing, but we read that, and the connection. When I first met Andy and Doug, they were doing that poem. I was doing that poem in separate universes, and then our universes collided, and they're like, oh, we're in the right place.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I actually sent Wendell a package of meat, as I call it, my meat grams. And so I was literally out moving my pigs one day, and I got a phone call from Wendell Berry.
No kidding. Wow.
So yeah, fast forward, actually Wendell, Doug and Andy have been to the Berry Center and done a class there. It's a long story connection. But anyway, Wendell Berry, they published a book just recently in the last couple of years using photos from like the 1970s at one of their hog killings. So some of the early Appalachian style of butchering, when they would the way they cut pigs up, isn't that far removed from the Spanish style. So it's funny. It all interconnects in a way.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this stuff. And, and as Michael Ruhlman, the author, said, there is no bad way to cut up a pig other than not thinking about it.
Yeah.
If you think about it and you think what your use is and how you want to do it, right? If you just like sausage, you want to make a sausage pig, I'm okay with that. If you're I was teaching, believe it or not, an Amishman how to butcher, and he was going to throw like part of the pork loin in the scrapple pot because he likes scrapple.
Right,
and I'm like, but it was my friend's pig. I'm like, I think Brian would like some pork chops. Let's ask him first before we throw that in the scrapple pot.
Right.
But if you like scrapple, hey, and I do like scrapple. I mean, I'm not, and that's the other thing. They're in the central Pennsylvania scrapple. In parts of Ohio, it's geta is another type of thing to use the scraps and cook it. If you go to Italy, it's called cicciolata. It's basically, you cook the head and the bones down, you throw some other stuff in it, and that was nourishment, right?
Yeah.
It gets back to that whole usage.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's what I personally, that's my, like, every time I find something different, something to make, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, let's do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's really fascinating to me. In fact, my wife and I were on a bicycling trip in northern Maine, and for breakfast one day, they had this stuff. They had there's a pancake called a ploy. Ploys are basically like a very thin buckwheat crepe, essentially. But they were serving it with this meat spread called creton. So creton, Creton. I'm like, what is this stuff? She goes, I don't know. The woman didn't really know. Well, what I found it's pig kidney with ground meat, and basically you cook it with like different spices like clove and nutmeg and whatnot, and it's traditionally eaten for breakfast as a breakfast treat.
No
but it's a way to use up the kidneys, really.
Yeah. Wow.
But so I love that, and like when I find something like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to try this.
No
now,
doubt.
some things I don't necessarily like. I've eaten my share of lungs. I don't really care for lungs. I don't keep my lungs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Spleen, I'm okay. I'll pass on the spleen. But pretty much everything else, I'll go there.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's some of that stuff seems like you got to be pretty brave, pretty daring to try it out. But then if somebody knows what they're doing and they take these things and prepare it, then it's like,
100%, right?
Yeah.
100%.
Interesting. Well, Jim, I don't want to keep you all night, man. We could go for hours talking about this really good stuff, but I appreciate you coming back on the podcast. Really enjoyed talking with you again. If anybody wants to find out anything about your situation online, and of course, possibly sign up for a class, where can they find you right now?
Well, you can hit me up. Look on my Instagram on Dr. Smokehouse. We don't have a website we're going to have our farm name is going to be the Wolf Pine Collective. We don't currently have a website. We have a domain name. We're hopefully going to get the website at some point built. I would also check out the guys at Hanyun Farm. They do have a website, and they'll be posting that class on their site hopefully in the next month or so. And that class is slated for September.
Yeah.
And if anybody needs an excuse to visit Maine, and loves to butcher pigs, like I said, I will tell you, Maine in September is absolutely wonderful.
Yep.
And coupled with the class, for whoever a significant other that might travel, there's a lot for them to do, a lot more than when I was in Central PA. That's for sure. Yeah, there's so much to see and do here that it would make it an added adventure.
Yeah, that's definitely. I agree with all of that. Maine in September is unbelievable. No insects, beautiful scenery. The fall foliage is in full force. Yep. Incredible.
Yep. It's wonderful.
Wonderful. Well, Jim, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been good talking with you.
Well, I really appreciate Jim coming on the podcast. It was good talking with him. Love that setup. And as I mentioned earlier, would love to stop by and see as he gets that finalized, see what he's put together there. Sounds like a really neat setup. So I don't know if you've noticed or not there. I would love some feedback on when we record these interviews. I'm trying to get audio balance. That's always the biggest trick, because people calling in, different mics, different setups, even different technology with how they're communicating with me. And so as I try to fine tune that, trying to find that balance, I've incorporated a little bit of reverb into my channel. And I don't know if you guys find that distracting or if you find that enhancing. So if you get a chance, if you feel it's worth your time, give me a shout, Troy@redtoolhouse.com. Just can be a simple note. Reverb's great. Reverb is a pain in the neck, or anything in between, and let me know. And I'm trying to make those adjustments on the fly. And as you can hear, playing around with it, that does it give depth to the interview, or does it seem to be too much of a distraction because it sounds like Troy's now standing in the bottom of the well. Obviously, we wouldn't use that much reverb. That's a little ridiculous. But anyway, would love your feedback on that. If you know of anyone or would like to be on the podcast yourself, by all means, reach out to me, Troy@redtoolhouse.com. Ideally, if you go to thepasturedpig.com and use our pre-screening entry form, that allows me to have some information about you, helps me figure out time zones and all that type of stuff, so I can be better at scheduling an upcoming interview with you. Anything topical, let me know. We actually have coming up here, and I think 2 episodes out, we have a topical discussion. Really excited about that. Had 2 people on to discuss shipping, what it takes to ship products, the pros and cons of shipping products across the country as we process our pork in that sense. So that'll be coming up here probably within, we'll probably see that drop in May, but anxious to get that one out there. Well, as always, I appreciate y'all listening. Can't thank the Patreon supporters enough. If you're not a Patreon supporter, let me encourage you to do that, even if it's just a one and done type of thing. Obviously, ongoing support helps us out as we look to upgrade things. I've got a hard drive here that's, I think it's hanging on by a thread. It's one of those deals that takes it about 5 minutes to mount when I start the computer, so I'm a little worried it's going to croak. So obviously, there's money that's invested in that. That's a couple $100 to get a good hard drive that needs to do what it does with the speed that I need to connect. So that obviously has cost. If you want to support, $5 a month would help that dramatically. Appreciate it. Well, I pray you all have a great week. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast, or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.